Hi, everybody. So, I wanted to share with you the book we're going to start our fourth grade year with. It is called Frindle, and it is by a gentleman named Andrew Clements. Hi. I want to read to you the back blurb. So, when you're reading a book, pick up a chapter book, you can always kind of flip it over, and usually there's a blurb, a little summary about the book. And it says, "Is Nick Allen a troublemaker? He really just likes to liven things up at school, and he's always had plenty of great ideas. When Nick learns some interesting information about how words are created, suddenly he's got the inspiration for his best plan ever, the Frindle." And if you look at the cover, you can probably guess what the Frindle is. We're going to stop right there and we're going to get right into the book because the book is so good. And I don't want to give too much away with the blurb. So here we go. If you're wondering why I showed you printed copies of the cover, it is because I'm reading it on my Kindle. And here we go. Chapter 1. Nick. If you ask the kids and teachers of Lincoln Elementary School to make 3 lists of all the really bad kids, whatever that means, and all the really smart kids, and all the really good kids, Nick Allen would not be on any of them. Nick deserved a list all of his own, and everyone knew it. Was Nick a troublemaker? That's hard to say. One thing's for sure, Nick Allen had plenty of ideas, and he knew what to do with them. One time in 3rd grade, Nick decided to turn Miss Deaver's room into a tropical island. What kid in New Hampshire isn't ready for a little summer in February? So he got everyone to make small palm trees out of green and brown construction paper, tape them onto the corners of each desk. Miss Deaver had only been a teacher for about 6 months, and she was delighted. "Oh, it's so cute!" The next day, all the girls wore paper flowers in their hair, and all the boys wore sunglasses and beach hats. Miss Deaver clapped her hands and said, "Oh, it's so colorful!" The next day after that, Nick turned the classroom thermostat up to about 90 degrees, and with a little screwdriver that he had brought from home. All the kids changed into shorts and t-shirts and no shoes. And when Miss Deaver left for the room for a moment, Nick spread out about 10 cups of fine white sand all over the classroom floor. Miss Deaver was surprised again at just how creative her students could be. But the sand got tracked out into the hallway, where Manny, the custodian, did not think it was creative at all, and he stomped right down to the office. The principal followed the trail of sand, and when she arrived, Miss Deaver was teaching the hula to some kids near the front of the room, and a tall, thin, shirtless boy with chestnut hair was spiking a Nerf volleyball over a net made by 6 t-shirts tied together. No shoes, no shirt for the boy. They're playing volleyball in the class, sand all over. The thermostat is set really hot, so the room is hot. Can you imagine what this looks like? And here's the teacher teaching the hula. Sounds kind of fun, but I don't think that I would let that happen in my class, so don't get any ideas. But back to the story. The 3rd grade trip to the South Seas ended with the principal, and it ended suddenly. But that didn't stop Nick from trying to liven things up. Lincoln Elementary needed a good jolt once in a while, and Nick was just the guy to deliver it. About a year later, Nick made the great blackbird discovery. One night he learned on a TV show that red-winged blackbirds give this high-pitched chirp when a hawk or some other danger comes near. Because of the way sound travels, the hunter birds can't tell where that high-pitched chirp is coming from. Oh, this is a bad idea. I don't know that I should read this. Okay, I'm going to, but don't try this at school. The next day, during a silent reading, Nick glanced at his teacher and he noticed that Miss Avery's nose was curved, kind of like the beak of a hawk. So Nick let out a high, squeaky blackbird. Miss Avery jerked her head up from her book and she looked around. She couldn't tell who had done it, so she just said, "Shh," to her whole class. A minute later, Nick did it again, louder. Peep! This time, there was a little giggling from the class. But Mrs. Avery pretended not to hear the sound, and about 15 seconds later, she slowly stood up and walked to the back of the classroom. Without taking his eyes off his book and without moving at all, Nick put his heart and soul into the highest and most annoying chirp of all. Miss Avery pounced. "Janet Fisk, you stop that this instant!" Janet, who was sitting rows behind Nick, promptly turned white and then bright crimson. "But it wasn't me, honest." There was a catch in Janet's voice, as if she might cry. Miss Avery knew she'd made a mistake, and she apologized to Janet. "But someone is asking for big trouble," said Mrs. Avery, looking more like a hawk every second. Nick kept reading, and he didn't make a peep. At lunchtime, Nick talked to Janet. He felt bad that Mrs. Avery had pounced on her. Janet lived in Nick's neighborhood, and sometimes they played together. She was good at baseball, and she was better at soccer than most of the kids in the whole school. Nick said, "Hey, Janet, I'm sorry I got you yelled at during reading. It was my fault. I was the one who made the sound." "You did?" said Janet. "But how come Mrs. Avery thought it was me?" So Nick told her about the blackbirds, and Janet thought it was pretty interesting. Then she tried making a peep or two, and Janet's chirps were even higher and squeakier than Nick's. She promised to keep everything a secret. For the rest of Nick's 4th grade year, at least once a week, Mrs. Avery heard a loud peep from somewhere in her classroom. Sometimes it was a high-pitched chirp, and sometimes it was a very high-pitched chirp. Mrs. Avery never figured out who was making that sound, and gradually she trained herself to just ignore it. But she still looked like a hawk. To Nick, the whole thing was just one long and successful science experiment, and Janet Fisk enjoyed it too. All right, so that's a little bit about Nick. It's not that he's super naughty, although somebody making a high-pitched peeping noise in the middle of class would definitely get on my nerves and drive me crazy. But he doesn't do it necessarily thinking I want to be naughty or bad. He's curious, and he wants just a little excitement in class. All right, as I said, don't try any of this, but it is fun to read about. Chapter 2, Mrs. Granger. 5th grade was different. That was the year to get ready for middle school. 5th grade meant passing classes. It meant no morning recess. It meant real letter grades on your report cards. And most of all, it meant Mrs. Granger. There were about 150 kids in 5th grade. And there were 7 5th grade teachers, 2 math, 2 science, 2 social studies, but only 1 language arts teacher. In language arts, Mrs. Granger had a monopoly and a reputation. So what that means when you say monopoly, we tend to think of the board game Monopoly, but it means business-wise that you are the only one who does it. So science, social studies, math, there's multiple teachers who teach those subjects at Nick's school. Kind of like if you're familiar with middle school, there's more than one math teacher in middle school. But only 1 language arts, only 1 reading and writing teacher, and that is Mrs. Granger. She teaches every single child who goes through that school. Mrs. Granger, back to the story by the way, Mrs. Granger lived alone in a tidy little house in the older part of town. She drove an old, pale blue car to school every morning, rain or shine, snow or sleet, hail or wind. She had a perfect attendance record that stretched back farther than anyone could remember. Her hair was almost white, swept away from her face and up into something like a nest on the back of her head, kind of like mine. Unlike some of the younger teachers, she never wore pants to school, only skirts. She had 2 skirt and jacket outfits, her gray uniform and her blue uniform, which she always wore over a white shirt with a little cameo pin at the neck. Mrs. Granger was one of those people who never sweats. It had to be over 90 degrees before she even took off her jacket. She was small, as teachers go. There were even some fifth graders who were taller. But Mrs. Granger seemed like a giant. It was her eyes that did it. They were dark gray, and if she turned them on full power, they could make you feel like a speck of dust. Her eyes could twinkle and laugh too, and kids said she could crack really funny jokes. But it wasn't the jokes that made her famous. Everyone was sure that Mrs. Granger had X-ray vision. Don't even think about chewing a piece of gum within 50 feet of her. If you did, Mrs. Granger would see you and catch you and make you stick the gum onto a bright yellow index card. Then she would safety pin that card onto your shirt, and you would have to wear it for the rest of the school day. After that, you had to take it home and have your mom or dad sign the card and bring it back to Mrs. Granger the next day. And it didn't matter to Mrs. Granger if you weren't in 5th grade, because the way she saw it, sooner or later, you would be. All the kids at Lincoln Elementary School knew that at the end of the line, in 5th grade, Mrs. Granger would be the one grading their spelling tests and their reading tests, and worst of all, their vocabulary tests, week after week, month after month. Every language arts teacher in the world enjoys making kids use the dictionary. Check your spelling, check that definition, check those syllable breaks. But Mrs. Granger didn't just enjoy the dictionary. She loved the dictionary, almost worshipped it. Her weekly vocabulary list was 35 words long, sometimes longer. 35 words every week? That's a lot of words. As if that wasn't bad enough, there was a word for the day on the blackboard every morning. If you gave yourself a day off and didn't write one down and you looked it up if you didn't write one down and look it up and learn the definition, sooner or later Mrs. Granger would find out, and then, just for you, there would be 2 words of the day for a whole week. Now, I'm going to show you a picture of Mrs. Granger. And for us doing online comprehensive distance learning, you are probably wondering, what is a dictionary? Or maybe you've heard of an online dictionary, or maybe you've used an online dictionary last year when you were working online. But a dictionary, now they have them online, but back when I was a kid, it was a big, thick book full of words. And it would tell you how to use the words in language. It would tell you the meaning of the word. And oftentimes, especially when I was a kid, they'd make you use a dictionary to look up how to spell a word, which was challenging because how do you find a word in a book when you don't know how to spell it? But you'd have to kind of sound it out in your head and go that way. Now, if you're using Google, you can use the spell check and it helps you with the spelling, but it doesn't help you know what a word means. And so finding out what a word means, still a dictionary is a great tool, and we'll be using it more this year in 4th grade. All right, Miss Granger, is she nice? Is she mean? We know that she can be funny. She sounds very strict and very old-fashioned. And we'll have to learn more about her as we read more of Frindle together. All right, we've learned about 2 characters today, Nick and Mrs. Granger. We don't know a whole lot about either one of them. One likes to liven things up and have fun. The other one likes tradition, and she seems like she has rules that she likes to follow. But don't forget, she does have a good sense of humor on occasion. So keep that in mind as we move ahead. All right, everybody, we'll continue the story tomorrow. Right now, if you are writing in your journal, take a few moments, finish that up. Maybe you want to draw a picture, or maybe you want to write something about Nick or Mrs. Granger, and we will see you tomorrow. All right, everybody. See you then. 8:30. Bye.